We are live. Windshield time. Allan, how are you?
Joe, I am awesome. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you as well. I appreciate it. I know it was kind of quick and it's somewhat last moment, and we've been talking to each other about getting back on. You helped me with this maybe it's been 2 years now or a
I
year
think
and
it's
a
been
half,
2 years. Yeah.
one of the earlier ones. So I'm glad you were able to jump back on, and I'm looking forward to talking talking positively about sales with you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Would you
Positive and sales is often not in the same sentence for sure.
well, maybe we're going to deep dive on that too. That's right. We can go right into it. You mind giving everybody just a quick who the heck is Allan, and
Sure.
catch us up to date, because I think your experience is really unique, from where you started in our space to where you are now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no. I mean, overall in sales, I think it's 27 years now. And very first in-home sales job I had was selling Better Living sunrooms. Did that for a couple of years. And that's where I learned the concept very early on, but I didn't know what to do with it back then, was that most companies, when they say they're sending you out for sales training, it's basically just product training. It's not sales training. And when you're building a sunroom, it's all about technical product, and that's what they teach you. So I went from there to Home Depot, was in the home services there. So windows, siding, roofing, gutters, all of that. And then was fortunate to be the first sales rep that Matt Essler hired for Renewal by Anderson of Southern New England when he brought his first dealership. Now he has
Oh, wow.
10. He has 10 dealerships now. But I was the first one in Southern New England. And I joke when I left, I was there for almost 13 years. And when I left, there were 88 sales reps. So I was one, and there were 88 when I left to start my own consulting business. So I was doing some training this week, and I wanted to sit down and figure this out. And it turns out that I was in over 10,000 homes in my career. So it was a lot. I've got a lot of experience. I was their top rep for many, many years. I wrote a book about why I was successful. It's right here, The 7 Secrets to Selling More by Selling Less. The book became a bestseller, and that's when I said, you know what? I think this is the second half of my career. I'm gonna teach people how to do this the right way. And I think we met somehow on Facebook or wherever we met, and then we started talking 2-3 years ago. So here I am.
Yeah, no, I still kind of awkwardly remember, weird, but it is, you and I you connected with me on LinkedIn and sent me a copy of the initial version.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
I think I probably said this last time because it's truth. I started to read it, and I say this awkwardly, like I'm literally like going through LinkedIn, doom scrolling, right? As I'm supposed to be probably going to bed to get a good night's sleep. And that's when I got the book. And I started it that night. And unfortunately, I do this a lot of the time, but I mean it with good books. I didn't end up sleeping very much that night because I read the whole thing. Um,
Thank
which
you.
was, yeah.
I did not know that story.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was awesome. The, I didn't realize that that was the part of Essler Group.
Yeah. I was so Essler, the Renewal by Anderson was in Rhode Island for 2 years under a different ownership, and they weren't doing very well. And so Matt came in, and his brother, John Essler, owned the Boston dealership at that time. So John knew about the business, was very successful. So his brother, Matt, who's his younger brother, decided to invest and get Southern New England. And then from there, he got Connecticut. And then he had 2 other, they kind of expanded the territory a little bit. Then he went to Arizona. Then he went to Colorado. Now he's in 2 places in Texas. He's in Maine. He's in Oklahoma. I forget all of them, but he's I'm not kidding. It's probably $800 million business right now.
So I was getting ready to ask, if you don't mind.
Not
I
at all.
hear about him all the time. We have mutual contacts who obviously know him from the RBA network,
Yep.
and know them, I should say, the group. It reminds me of like how you find those conglomerate groups that at a real estate brokers become, bigger and bigger. Like they're a part of, say, Remax, but yet
it's their group. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Same
awesome.
concept.
What do you think what do you attribute their success, for what outsider looking in, but also working for them? Anything you attribute his success to?
I mean, I will say this: Matt was, and still is, he was a phenomenal owner, very approachable, not leading from up high, in the trenches with everyone. I mean, when he hired me, he ran like 5 appointments with me. The owner of the company just said, "I'm going to run with you and see what you do." So that was really cool right out of the gate. Um, and then you know what? He hired smart people. He's one of those leaders that knows that if this is going to work, I'm going to need the people smarter than me. And they started to put together some processes that were trainable. And that people are people. Not one person is the same. So that's why processes struggle, because you need a process for people to follow, but everyone has their own personality as well. So I've always said you need a process that's flexible enough to work within different people's personalities. But they were smart enough to come up with processes and hire the right sales management people. And you know what? One of the things that Matt did extremely well is he made, even as the company got bigger, he made it feel like you were part of a family and part of a team. And when you do that, you want to run through a wall for a guy like that. And he hired people that did the same thing. And um, the sales meetings that were run, sometimes they turned into typical sales meetings, but sometimes they were like, you know what? They said, "Al, why don't you get up here for a half hour and talk to the team," rather than just the sales manager blabbing on and on for 2 hours every week. So they did a lot of innovative things. The technology was right up there with, they helped the RBA network actually fix their technology and what they started to present in the home. I actually had big hand in that. I was their number one rep, and they always asked me what I was doing. And, I would tell them a few things, but they were stuck on the product training, just like every other company is. And I said, you got to stop talking about the product and just start talking about emotion and feelings. And I would just show people pictures. I joke with my old boss now. We're friends. He's retired, the old sales manager. But after I left, I told him, we were having a beer one night, and I said, "You know what? I never told you this in the 13 years I worked for you." I said, "But you know how many times I brought a window in the house?" He's like, "I don't want to know." And I said, about
Yeah.
25% of the time I actually brought a window in the house. And if you tell that to a window company, they're going to pass out, because you're trained to always bring the window in, to always do the heat lamp demonstration. And I got to tell you, again, this was just me figuring out how people are, but I was very good at reading what people wanted to see, not what I wanted to force down their throat. So anyway, to answer your question, he was just very good at creating a really great culture and some really great processes that majority of people that they hired could follow.
Now, I do want to caveat what you just said, because I'm sure there's going to be some people that are like, "What the Allan?" You can Google this, folks who watch this. Some of them are going to watch it on replay. When Allan says he was the top rep, it's legit. You'll find the pictures on the old Google machine, like him getting the awards, him accepting the awards. Like I stalked you out probably 3
Yeah.
years ago when I was like, "Who wrote another book?" Right? And I'm not being
Right.
funny, but like I'm like, I gotta figure. And then I started to read the book, and I'm like, "Oh, this is fun." Like, I don't know. I just like disruption. And to me, from everything I've been taught in almost 17, 18 years of how to sell in the home, you were like, "Yeah, hold my beer. Watch this."
Yeah.
And because I think it's in the book, you're talking about how you were riding with reps. You actually jumped on the road maybe with a rep, and
Yep.
he or she was pitching, and you watched the customer literally check out. Like,
Yep.
"Oop, there it goes. He's gone." Like,
Yep.
eye roll, done, because
Yep.
he wasn't really listening to what they were actually telling him. Um,
Well, one of the biggest aha moments for me, and I can pinpoint when my career started to go up. Um, well, let me back. Let me start with this. I think and to be successful in sales, the number one thing you have to do is a self evaluation. You always have to be evaluating what you're doing. Pull over after you're done with an appointment and take down notes. What did I do that was good there? What did I do that wasn't? Whether it's a sale or not. But one of the things I started to realize was, um, I am just talking over people and at people. I'm not really listening. And that's really, when you look at some studies, the number one, when you ask people what's the number one problem with sales reps, most people say they're too aggressive. That's actually always in the top three. But usually the number one thing is salespeople don't listen, because they're always thinking about what the next thing they want to say. And the only way to find out if you're listening or if they're hearing you is if you're watching their body language. And once I started studying really hard and spending every single day reading and absorbing as much as I can on nonverbal signals, that's when my career took off. And I based all of my sales presentations, my demos, whatever you want to call them, based on the body language as I was moving through that appointment. And when I would ride along with reps, I would simply just watch the customer's body language, and I could pinpoint right to the second when they lost them, when they should have shut up, when they should have asked a question, when they should have paused, simply based on nonverbal signals and even tone. And if you don't pay attention to that, and here's the funny thing, Joe, if you ask, if I have 1,000 sales reps in the room and I ask the question, hey, who in here pays attention to body language? Everyone will raise their hand because they all think they do. Then I followed up with this question. Okay, when you see something happen in front of you, what do you do about it? And it's crickets. So they may notice something. They may notice someone purse their lips or roll their eyes, but they don't address it. They just keep talking. And it's sitting in the back of their brain like, I just saw them do that, but let me just keep talking anyway. And literally they just lost the sale. They could be there for another hour. You lost the sale at that point. So, one of the biggest things I always tell, I tell everyone who's listening, if you want to get better at sales, start studying body language.
I saw, it's funny you bring up that. I'm looking for it right now. I got way too many notes probably, but it was, I don't know who said it. It was a training. Here it goes. It was a training. It was look for, not so much the small changes in the customer's body language, which but this was probably more beginner, but it was like, look for the big ones. And then also don't assume just what they're thinking with that. Ask. 100%. So the example that I have in my notes, this is in my notes, customers leaning forward, just out of curiosity, how do you think it feel with what we've been talking about when you see something that is a shift in terms of how they were, like, or calling them out? Basically, it sounds like it's aggressive, but you're just saying, hey, that doesn't sound like it jives well with what, what I just said doesn't sound like it's jiving well with what you think or feel.
Yeah. I call it, so the famous term in sales is ABC, right? Always be closing, which I've always hated. I hate the term closing, but always be closing. Everybody knows it. Well, my ABC is always be checking, and you're always checking on the customer. And there's a way to do that very conversationally, like you said. And I like to use the phrase, hey, Joe, let me pause here for a minute. Does talking about the R value of the glass and this low E coating and the silver molecules, is that something you're interested in? And you're probably going to say, absolutely no. I just care about, can I get wood or oak on the inside? So two things just happened. The customer now feels like, wow, this guy's actually listening to me. He's paying attention. Three things happened. Second thing happened. I brought him back into the conversation. And third, he just told me how to sell him, simply by asking one open-ended question and pausing the conversation rather than just blathering through your specs and features.
We're 8 minutes and 50 seconds in. And if no one listens past this point, fair enough, because you just got the value right there. I'm dead serious. I mean, that's it. I hope whoever does watch this, that they rewind that because of what you get out of it. Man, that's it's funny. I think I mentioned to you, I always have like a bunch of questions that I want to ask you, and you've kind of just tackled 7 of them, but that's fine. I think it's great because, I think it's great. I mean this because you live it. You can tell you live it. You're not, and I know that one of the things I always attribute to you, and I steal it all the time. I've also credited you on the Facebook group, but I steal it with our own team and is I took your course on price impressions, price conditioning. You have different verbiage for it, but the whole concept of don't start building value until you anchor the right number in the customer's mind.
Yep, you got it.
Because you get to the end and you absolutely did condition them, but all you did was condition them to the highest number they had in their head, which is still lower than the, you know what I mean? And do you mind, if you don't mind, at a high level, just talk about it? I know it's been in the group once, and like I said, I stole what you taught me just to answer somebody's question in the group, but
no, I mean, it's first of all, I'm thrilled that you're using it. I mean, I'm doing this so people can get better and help people. So yeah, I give out free advice. I just talk all the time. The content I put out there, but it's very simple. See, my tagline, my mission is like changing the world of sales one team at a time. That's what I want to do, because sales has been broken. When you say the term sales, there's always a negative perception about it. Nobody wants to meet with you, even if they do need windows or siding or roofing. But the biggest problem that sales reps have is not only are they afraid of the price of their product, but they don't know how to present it properly. And they're trained. This is where the training is wrong. You are trained by everyone to build value. Go in there and build the value of the product. This is the best jacuzzi in the world. It's got 16 jets. It makes you dinner. It's like it comes in gold, silver, and bronze. We have the best installers in the world. The company's been around for 25 years. In fact, the owner, Joe, is best friends with the governor of the state. All of this crap that you think is building value, right? Here's the problem. Before you got to the house, the customers had a conversation, probably the night before, that morning. How much do you think this is going to be, honey? I don't know. A jacuzzi is going to be, I don't know, $3,000, maybe $4,000. So in their head, let's say they've got $4,000 and that jacuzzi is 10. So you start building value for 45 minutes and you thinking you're building value to 10,000, because how could they think it's less? And they're thinking in their head, holy crap, this is really going to be $4,000. So you think you're all ready to go. You told them everything that's great. Company's great. Installation's great. We'll be out here in 3 weeks. This is like, here it is, $9,965. And they're going to go, holy crap, sticker shock, because you built value to the number in their head, not to the number that it's going to be. You have to anchor a price first. Let them be shocked first, and then build value to that. Because what happens is, as that number is starting to absorb in their head, let's say you said the phrase, before I start, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, do you think a jacuzzi is going to cost more than $13,000 or less than $13,000? And they'll probably say, holy crap, less. All right, well, you build the jacuzzi. It's up to you. We'll get to there. Then you just move on. Now the 13 is literally anchored in their brain. And then you start building value. The 4,000 that they had in their head is gone. And now they start to think, wow, this is going to be a lot more than 4,000. This could be 13. And then you show them a price of 10. Feels pretty good. No more shock. No more sticker shock.
Yeah, so I still use your example about the window. Is this going to be more or less than this window? Do you think this is something that's going to be more or less than $3,000? Right. It doesn't make a difference. The key here, which I think you iterated, I'll just reiterate to anybody watching, is it doesn't make a difference what they say. They can say, holy crap, holy worse, right? Right. Just to keep this it's not PG rated, but you get my point. Right. That's fine. It's irrelevant. It's been said. Right.
It's irrelevant. And I get pushback on this quite a bit, actually. And people say, well, if you anchor, 10,000, what if they say, oh, get out of my house if it's going to be 10,000? You simply say, well, I don't know if it's going to be 10,000. It's going to be up to you. You're designing your jacuzzi or you're designing your window. So let's just do that. And then it calms them down, but you still anchored 10,000 in their head. And the key here is to anchor more than what it's going to be, obviously.
Yeah.
So when I was selling a double hung window, it was $1,500. Now it's probably $2,000, but let's say it was $1,500. I would say, do you think a double hung window in your house is going to be more than 3,000 or less than 3,000? And 99 times out of 100, they would say, wow, I hope it's less. Well, again, you're going to design the windows. There's so many features, but you'll design it and we'll figure out what it is. And I just moved on.
Yeah. Good news is we're going to find out everything.
And here's the great part. I loved when I put down, $28,000 for 30 windows, right? Now they're thinking 30 windows is probably going to be $15,000 because everyone thinks a window is $500. I put down 28,000 after I do it the right way. And they would say, all right, that's what I thought it was going to be. I love when I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you're like, no, you didn't, but in your
exactly.
mind,
No, you didn't, but that's good. Right. Let's go ahead. Financing or cash.
So on that note, cause it always comes up, why do you think that a customer always thinks it's half of what it's going to be? I'm just curious. It doesn't really, it doesn't make a difference, but it always ends up being like you said, windows 1,000, they're thinking 5. Right. A bathroom's, 25, they're thinking 10, whatever the product is. It always just seems to be in their mind that it's half.
I think it's two reasons for this because, one is most in-home products you can't find prices for because they're all custom. So you can't. So there's all kinds of different, when you type in prices, you get all kinds of different prices from 500 to 5,000. But I also think a big part of it is, I call it the I know a guy syndrome. I know a guy who can put a roof on for $6,000 when a roof's really going to be 25 grand. But so customers are always trying to find out what a price is. That's why I tell companies that don't sell custom products or have things that you can get a price easy. Put your price on your website. People want to know how much stuff is. That's a qualified lead if your price is on the website. People are afraid. That's one of the reasons that sales has this bad reputation, is people are afraid to get ripped off because they don't know what the price is. So is this a real price? Are you ripping me off? Is this 5 times the cost because you're marking everything up? All that fear is in there, but there's so many different prices. So I think people always will default to the lower price, or the price that their Uncle Tony paid for the siding 10 years ago.
That's a good point, because it's one of those things where I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and heard a gentleman who you may know indirectly, Marcus Sheridan, speak. And he wrote a
Heard the
great
name.
book.
I don't think I know what he looks like.
He was a pool builder originally out of a fiberglass pool builder out of Virginia, Northern Virginia. And he wrote he basically started to realize, why don't we just answer these questions in advance? Like,
Right.
why are we so scared of price? Why are we so scared of our competitors and saying that we're, so then we just go in and we say, we're the best. Like, address some of the cons with our offering,
right.
And so anyway, he wrote a book called They Ask, You Answer. And the concept is, take those things and actually use them for lead generation, because now you become the trusted source because you've made an article actually talking about it. But anyway,
right. Yeah, psychologically, sales is all psychological, and that's my whole book is the psychology. But there's certain things, if you know how the brain works and you can take advantage of how the brain works, the 7 pillars of influence by Robert Cialdini, when he wrote that, that's just how the brain works. So it's not an underhanded thing to do. It's not unethical. If the brain thinks this way, like using social proof, then take advantage of using social proof, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, it's only manipulation if you don't actually do what you say you're going to do, or your product isn't going to solve their problem. But if it is,
yeah, you're there to help someone, and if you really believe your product's going to make their life better, then yeah, it's your job to convince them to buy it.
Let me ask you another question, because you brought it up. This is easier than I thought it was going to be, talking with you, which I kind of actually knew it would be, actually. Afraid of price. You mentioned reps are afraid of price is the first challenge, is the first issue. Yep. Why? It's true. I agree. So I don't mean it that way. What do you think's the cause of that? Especially when, if you're new to the game, you have no idea what something costs. What's the reason behind that?
Because the reps would have trouble spending that themselves. Most of the reps are not going to be able to, and I shouldn't say most.
Yeah.
But you get a good handful of reps are not going to spend $50,000 on a roof on their house. So when they're trying to convince someone else to do that, they're very shy about it. And because they feel like they can't do it, that you have to get yourself out of the equation. And there was a guy I worked with at Renewal. He was a funny guy. He was actually a really good rep. And I mean, I would say if I had to take a poll, 70% of the reps at Renewal, probably countrywide at RBA, are afraid of the price. Because everyone says, oh, your windows are so expensive, windows are so expensive. So then it becomes something that they believe in. He had an opposite take. He would put down 80 grand for windows, and he'd go, oh my God, look at the computer came up with. This is a deal. Because this is a deal. He would always say, this is a deal. He was this is a deal rep, but he had such conviction in his pricing. He was like, what you're getting here is like, oh my God, this is such a great price for what you're getting. That's how you have to think about your price, but you have to believe in it too. If you don't believe it, you're not going to be believable. But if you think what you're selling is really, really good and it's going to help them, the price doesn't matter. That's why price increases. Everyone freaks out about price increases. Don't forget about pricing. It doesn't matter. The homeowner doesn't know there was a price increase. Just sell it with the same enthusiasm. This is a great price for what you're getting. Really is.
That's it's a great point. And that's, even if the customer, does know, I mean, At the end of the day, if that's your price, that it is what it is.
It is what it is, right?
I don't, I don't go and everybody uses this, but it's so true. You don't go into the grocery store and negotiate a loaf of bread.
Right.
It is what it is. I mean, and what I guess I'm getting at, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes I think we induce our own objections because of either
Yeah.
lack of belief or opening the door to it's like it's negotiable to like I don't know, just something I always kind of chew on in my head. You brought up kind of why you didn't say this, so I'm gonna ask the question directly. Why do you think you mentioned a few things, but why do you think, in your experience, why most salespeople, and I hate to say most, but a lot of salespeople fail, especially in our industry? What do you think that root cause is?
Um, Lack of good leadership, number one. I think they're trained poorly. And I think sales leaders they put too much pressure on the rep because of numbers and having to hit metrics rather than supporting them and being there, because sales is not an easy job. If you're up a 40% closer, you still got 6 out of 10 people telling you no. It's like baseball. I heard this the other day, and you think about it this way: baseball is a game of failure. A Hall of Fame baseball player fails 7 out of 10 times, but he's still a 300 hitter. It's how you deal with the failure, and that's where I think the leadership comes in. And when you have really good sales leadership to help you get through those tough times and help the mental part of it, you'll stay around longer, and you'll realize that it could be not only a lucrative career, but it could be a very just a career that makes you feel good about yourself. See, the other things that I've found in the years I've been doing this is so many salespeople feel like crap because they're a salesperson. Like, I'm a salesperson. You go to a picnic, and if you got a sales guy, hey, what do you do? Cousin Tony, and if he's a sales guy. He's, oh, well, I work for this company. It's like, people don't say I'm a sales guy. Like, you got to be proud of that. Kids don't grow up saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one says salesperson ever.
Yeah.
And just recently have they started putting actual sales degrees in universities. So it has had such a negative connotation that when you're struggling with it, you start to put yourself in that typical salesperson perception, and it's hard to get out of it. So I think, to answer your question, it starts with really good sales leadership. And then it goes down to the training. The training has to be fixed. Sales training is not product training. You need to train people on how to sell and how to have a conversation. Sales is about communication. Once you learn how to communicate first, then you can learn about the product. Don't teach me about the product first. Teach me how to ask open-ended questions first. Teach me how to ask follow-up questions. Teach me how to present a price. Teach me what the brain is thinking when I do this. Teach me about body language. Oh, then when you learn all that, okay, here's the window now that you need to sell. That's where it's backwards.
That's I'm sure with your training you're doing that. Or wonder
Yep.
why it makes sense to me. Wonder why it doesn't get adapted. Is it because of the demand to perform?
I
And
think people are, I think because sales has been this way for so long, you have to follow this ABC product pitch process. It's hard for people to adjust to that. So that's why I don't go in and say, here's the 7 secrets process. I don't really call it a process. I call it the philosophy. Here's the philosophy. Here's the 7 secrets that I looked at and I realized this is what made me successful. Here's what you need to teach your reps, because you can learn this within the parameters of whatever process you're teaching anyway, whatever product you have. I can teach people body language no matter what their sales process is, because you can incorporate paying attention to body language into that sales pitch. I can teach people how to use social proof properly, because I don't have to change anything in your sales pitch. But you get some of these owners or sales managers like, well, we already have a process. We don't want to bring anyone in and upset the apple cart. And that's my sales job when I'm selling myself, is I'm not upsetting the apple cart. I'm enhancing what you're doing. That's my job.
yeah, no, I think I it's a good point.
Yeah.
I try to remind people all the time, especially when it comes to like metrics. It's like, hold on, who says that's the law? That's just the company
Right.
budgeted number. Like,
Right.
are we handcuffing ourselves by being tied to, say, that goal versus just maybe there's a better way
Right.
and performance gets elevated so you're not constantly getting kicked in the gut 7 out of 10 times or 6 out of 10 times. I meant to ask you, all the time that you spent in the home, you never went into be a manager at that RBA? So you were just, like you said, 10,000 homes. I mean, you just ran leads.
I just ran leads, but what I really enjoyed when I was there, and I actually told them they could ask me to do it anytime. I did really enjoy getting up and telling people what I was doing and doing some training. I didn't want the administrative part of management. I didn't want any part of that. When I knew that when you get up to 50, 60, 70 sales reps and you got set appointments that night and you got to sit there, are you kidding me? I mean, I told my boss, I'm like, I don't know how you do this every day. Even if he wound up with 3 other assistant managers. So all 4 of them are assigning appointments for 80 reps every single night and then making sure that they result the appointment and the pictures are in and all this administrative stuff. I would have lost my mind. But training, you want to teach me how to train them to sell and be psychologically aware? Yeah, I'll do that all day long. I love it. Public speaking and training is I can roll out of bed and do that any day of the week.
Yeah, that's a good. It's unfortunate. I always say this lightly but it is true. I think sales management in this industry is probably the armpit position of the business, but yet so critical to the success of a
Critical.
market or a branch or whatever.
See,
Yeah,
I think you should have 2 equal people. You should have a sales, I'd have to come up with the name, but a sales psychological manager, someone who's just dealing with the people and their appointments and how they're going. And then the logistical person, the administrative person to assign the leads and to make sure all of the paperwork is filled out properly. Then you've really got, if you're set up that way, I think you'd be really set up for success. But having one person or 2 or 3 do all of those things at the same time, you're usually, it takes away from all of the important thing that the manager needs to do from a relationship standpoint with the people that report to him or her.
yeah. There's a actually, I don't know if he's in the group because I think he's one of the smart humans in this world that's not on Facebook, but he implemented that probably within this past year, where he has a sales operations manager and then he has the normal sales manager who's,
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
and it's because you're right, it's your sales manager, whether it's like you're saying psychological side, the one that's really supposed to be out there coaching and teaching on how to grow and develop in the role, is usually pushing a lot of paper behind the scenes,
Yes.
and probably where burnout comes from. Right now, from what you see, what's you mentioned, reason salespeople fail, lack of sales leadership. Where's the disconnect there?
The disconnect from what to what? What do you
Sorry,
mean?
my apologies. From a good sales leader to a bad sales, like a good sales manager and a bad sales manager. Where do you think? Where do you think it gets lost there?
Well, what I see, and I think I don't think this is just in sales. I think this is leadership in general. I think bad leaders are they put themselves on a different level. Like a good leader, you need to be on the same level. In fact, you're not leading your team, you're serving your team, right? You're not a leader, you're a server. Your team doesn't work for you, you work for your team. And your biggest thing is to make sure your team is okay. And I think a lot of sales leaders and leaders in general spend a lot of time with remuneration, with this is what happens if you don't do this, and they're you didn't hit your numbers this, so they're like you're constantly almost yelling at people or admonishing them for not hitting their numbers, and you're spending your time being the bad cop, and that's not going to build trust. That's not going to make people want to work for you or run through a wall for you. So when the difference between a leader that says you didn't hit your numbers this month, step it up, to the leader says, all right, Joe, you had a rough month. I understand it. What do you need help with? It's night and day. And
Yeah.
that's how you need to lead. And I think that's probably the biggest disconnect is leaders are spend too much time admonishing their salespeople rather than lifting them up.
The I love the leaders, like you said, the first example. Hey, you didn't hit your numbers, fix it. Well,
Right.
obviously I would if I knew what I knew
Yeah,
what to do.
exactly.
Like that's where I kind of need your help, man. Like or lady, whatever. Like, but yeah, I've seen a few posts in the group lately, um, which typically the group's pretty positive, but obviously there's been some sharing around that with some, and it looks like to me it's I think there's a underlying, and I think I commented, I don't think this particular example is the I think this is the symptom. I think there's a root cause deeper that's causing this sales manager to act this way against a rep. But
Yeah,
it's
I saw that post because that was that sales manager sent a text to the rep that rep and winded up posting in the group. So yeah,
yeah,
could
yeah.
be right.
It's I mean this business is like any type of performance based business, there's going to be pressure, but it's also in terms of how you respond to pressure. Like that's why I'm so big on driving process over outcome. It takes the pressure off. You don't control the result.
100%. Yeah.
Just
And
execute.
driving process and over outcome is a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. I talk a lot about mindset. In fact, I'm starting to work on my second book, and I'm going to have a whole chapter on mindset of sales because one of the other major issues with salespeople is their mindset. It changes so quickly from one day to another. It's so up and down, and you're not going to be successful on that roller coaster. That's where burnout comes from. And that's when people leave sales for a different job and they say sales sucks because of all of these things. And it's really, it all starts and ends with mindset. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big one and it gets overlooked. Um, yeah, I don't know. You mentioned earlier that your sales manager retired from the industry. That's a rarity.
Yeah. He was doing it for many, many years. He actually was at Home Depot when I was there as like the East regional manager. And then he was brought in by Renewal when he came into Southern New England to kind of start that dealership there. So that's where he got me. That's where he pulled me in. Let me tell you a quick. I'll tell you a quick story about Home Depot,
Yeah.
and this is years ago, but it goes back to the poor management. So we had a monthly meeting up in Uxbridge, Mass, and there was usually about 250 reps there. So all the Home Depot store people came, and it was about 250 reps, and we would have our monthly sales meeting. And this one particular quarter, the whole group was doing particularly bad. I think everyone was like the closing percentage was probably like 23% across the board, something like that. So they bring in the big wig from corporate in Atlanta. It was just like Glengarry Glen Ross. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it was like
but that's when you said that. I go, oh boy.
it was just like Alec Baldwin came in, and he comes in and he's got his Home Depot apron on, right? And he spent, I'm not telling you, Joe, I'm not kidding. He spent an hour screaming at us, not talking loud, yelling at us like we were his teenage son who just got, wrecked the car or something. And I'll never forget a lot of his stuff. I don't remember. I just remember him yelling. But the one thing I'll never forget, he said, this always stuck with me. And I may even put this in my book. He said, "You are responsible as sales reps for Home Depot to go into that home and recite the same exact sales pitch word for word every single time. Doesn't matter what the customer is, doesn't matter what the income level is, doesn't matter what their race or what their ethnicity is. Same exact sales pitch." And he said, quote, "word for word every single time." And he kept saying, "Sales is a numbers game. You do that enough times, you'll make enough sales." And no wonder why they're closing 23%. Because if everyone did that, that's pretty much what you're going to close.
Yeah.
But that was the corporate mentality at the time.
Did you always? This brings up a good point, or a good thing to talk about briefly. When you got in the industry initially, obviously, I'm assuming you were taught. Obviously, as you mentioned, a bunch around product, but then maybe some form or fashion of a step selling system, whatever. Doesn't
Mhm.
did you did you start off doing it your own way from day
No.
one? Okay, so you did say start off in terms of whatever was trained to you, and then slowly to what build maybe a foundation, and then slowly incorporate it as you learned.
Well, it's wild that you asked me this question because it's a great question. And I told this story. I just came back from Cape Cod and I did 3 days of training out there with a lumber company. And this story was part of the training because this is what I was talking about. Because this is a building material lumber company, and their sales training, quote unquote, is not sales training. Just like I said, it's product training. They learn about the wood, they learn about the LVL, they learn about the screws, the nails, all this stuff. So let me tell you when I realized specs and features and benefits don't sell. Emotion sells. And I learned this by myself. And that's when I started to get better. And then when I added body language, I started to get really better. But so we were trained at Better Living Sunrooms to, we went up, they sent me up to Buffalo, New York for 6 days for what they called sales training. And it was 8 hours a day in a room learning about the product, the R value of the roof, the length of the screws, the stainless steel rollers, all that stuff, hardware. And then like at the end of it, the last half of the last day, that's like, okay, this is how you present the product. This is the order you put it in. But there was no sales psychology behind it whatsoever. So we were told we had to walk into the house with the big suitcases. And when you have sunroom suitcases, they're like the size of, 6 golf bags. They're like these giant suitcases. And we had to show up at the front door with that. So imagine the sales walls that the customers put up at that point. And I went in that first 2 or 3 months and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I was closing 18%. And I found out at the time that the national closing percentage of every rep that worked for the sunroom company was 19%. And the company was happy with that. They were like, we will hit our revenue numbers if our reps close between 17 and 19%, which think about how unbelievable that is. Like 8 out of 10 people are telling you no. So I got so discouraged because the amount of rejection was very high. And I realized this is not working. And if I run across an engineer every now and then, that's gonna sell the sunroom, but nobody cares about this stuff. So one day I went in, I left my bags in the car, and I just had my clipboard in my hand. It was an older couple, and I simply introduced myself and I said, "How can I help you?" And they walked me out to their deck, and they had this beautiful backyard. And the guy said, "You know what? We have this really nice deck. We love being out here, but we're only out here a couple months a year. It's like too cold in the winter. It's too hot in the summer. We're thinking about, we'd like to know some options of maybe putting a sunroom on here and closing this thing." And all I did, Joe, was I just looked around and I said, wow, imagine sitting here with a cup of coffee on a beautiful snowy December day, and it's nice and warm in here, and you're watching the deer walk through your yard through the glass of your new sunroom. And the woman's knees almost buckled. She's like, "Oh my God, that's what I want." And I'll never forget, I sold them a $60,000 sunroom 40 minutes later, less than an hour. I never showed him one screw, one piece of hardware, one R value of the roof, nothing. It was all based on emotion. And that's when I realized when you put your customer in the position of feeling what it's like to own your product or service, instead of talking about the product, more people will buy it. So that's when I really started to take off.
That's I mean, it's so spot on, and it's tough. That's why I wanted to ask the question, right? Because sometimes you're trying to, teach somebody that doesn't know anything about, and maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's don't. Sometimes we tend to teach too much, and now they got 100 million facts and figures and specs going through their head versus just getting in the home and having a conversation.
Right. Having a conversation. And then, and I will tell you, the second biggest problem with sales reps that I see all the time, I don't want to call it a problem, but the thing that most sales reps struggle with is they sell too fast. Someone says the problem, my roof is leaking, and they say, "Okay, let me show you my shingles." Well, instead of saying, "Let me show you my shingles," well, you just ask an open-ended question. "Well, tell me more about that." And you find, well, the roof is leaking in the garage. Really? Well, describe for me what's going on. Well, it's been leaking for 3 years. Oh, really? In what ways has that affected anything? Oh, well, it's been leaking on my wife's Christmas decorations. Aha, there's the real problem. Your roof leaking is a small problem compared to it's leaking on your wife's Christmas decorations. But then all of a sudden, you're now the rep that asks these great questions, and it's a conversation, and you're much better than the other 2 reps that just went in and talked about the specs and how great the company was. That's emotion right there. You hit an emotional chord, and that's why the customer is going to buy from you.
Especially with a roofing product. No one gives a
shit. Yeah,
shit.
exactly.
Just kidding. That's, spot on. I just, Yeah, I always try to wrap my head around it. I believe in it. I'm It's probably why I've always followed your content, and it's just amazing because so many times you in companies you realize that the top performers don't really follow the original model.
Right. There's, and I don't want to come across as saying you should not follow the company
Yeah,
process. You should absolutely know the company process by heart. But then the process needs to be, you need to have the flexibility and the acumen as a salesperson to be able to adjust what that customer needs. And you learn that by simply asking really good questions. That's it. And it's like, here's the thing about, like, when people say, I don't want to read a script. I hate sales scripts. And yes, a script sounds like a script, but when you're watching a movie, the actors are actually reading a script, but you don't know it if they're actually doing it well. So when you can get to the point where you can recite everything about your product and company in a conversational way where they don't know you're actually reading a script, and you're adjusting what you're saying based on their reaction, their body language, their emotion, their tone, asking good questions, you become the anti-salesperson. You become the salesperson that they weren't expecting. This guy's really listening to me. I want to do business with him. I don't want to see anyone else. I feel really comfortable. How do I sign? That's
yeah.
where you want to get to.
Speaking of that, obviously you start in your career sell a little bit different than Norman. You brought this up earlier, where it's like this, um, customers. All customers are expecting the sales guy, right? Their guard is up and everything,
Hmm.
but yet you're different. You
Hmm.
come in the bloom. How did you still face that? You still probably face the initial resistance until they're like, oh my goodness, Allan's different than the previous two. How do you work through that? You know what
It
I
was
mean?
actually it was actually very simple, because for the most part, they've got their walls up. They've got. I'll give you a quick body language tip. When you get met at the door, you're going to get a polite smile, what I call a fake smile. It's a smile that people give when you meet them at a networking function, at a function. You get a fake smile. When you start your conversation, you're going through the appointment, and that turns into a real smile where their eyes squint a little bit and the mouth goes up toward the ears. Then you know you're doing a good job. But I would simply go in and diffuse everything right away by saying, I wouldn't go in and talk about the weather or say, oh, the traffic was bad, all that stupid small talk that you're trained to do. I would just go in and say, hey, tell me why I'm here. And then I would say, just so you know, to ease your mind, I'm not going to do a big dog and pony sales show. I'm not doing any of that today. And the amount of times people would actually take a deep breath or say thank you was, I wish I had $1 every single time, because every time I said, just so you know, I'm not here to give you a sales demonstration. I'm not here to do a dog and pony show, jump on my windows, light them on fire. They would laugh. And I say, just tell me why I'm here. Tell me why you called us. And that was it. Their walls went down. They took a big, deep breath, and they would take me to the window. And I'd go from there. And then I would ask the right questions, and that would guide my appointment.
Now with this idea, and like you mentioned, not really a process per se, but your 7 secrets, and really focusing on um, the questions that you ask after you do a training with say like the lumber company you just mentioned, right? How do
Mm-hmm.
they? I think you'll agree, spatial repetition is important. Just because you trained them for a day or 3 days, like once you're out of there, you got to obviously maintain it and whatever. How do you, without with it not being so much like scripted, it's more of a conversation. What do you recommend from a training perspective, or continuing to train? How do they do? How do you do that?
So it depends on how it's set up. So some of these companies hire me to come in and do 2 or 3 days of training, and then I follow that up with anywhere between 2 and 6 virtual meetings with the same group, and we talk about their appointments, which gets them to talk about their appointments and say, I did this, and I'll say, well, you should have done this here. Oh yeah, you're right. And then it starts to stick. If you just come in and do 3 days of sales training, it's not going to stick. It just never
Yeah.
does. It's like going to a conference, getting all pumped up and all excited, and then 3 days later you get back and you're doing the same old stuff again. So for me, that's why I call it, it's like a hybrid method. I'll come in and I'll spend the 2 or 3 or 4 days with you face to face. You get to know me, I get to know you. And then once a week after that, for however, 3 to 6 weeks, I meet with that same exact team and we start talking about, literally just talk about the appointments. And now they start doing things. Now they start realizing, you know what, I should have used social proof here. Oh, I didn't price condition. I literally went out to Arizona and I trained a window covering company. They did blinds and shades and stuff. And we spent almost all one and a half a days on pricing, on like how to anchor the price and how to present it. 3 weeks later, there's only a sales team of 5. And most of them are doing okay. But this one guy was really struggling because, man, I've really been struggling. So I asked him what he was doing. And I said, how's it going with the pricing? He goes, everyone's still getting sticker shock. I said, well, have you been showing 3 prices and anchoring? He said, well, no, I'm not doing that yet. I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah.
And I said, the other 4, are you doing it? Yeah, we're doing it. It works great. So it's like, but if I don't follow up with that, he's just struggling and thinks my sales training sucks. So it's one of those things where you really gotta meet with these guys fairly consistently after the training to make it stick.
And it sounds like when you do those meetings, and if you don't mind, I'm just asking this because there's sales managers on the call that are like, okay, well, what do I do? Like to just, they're almost like you're doing debriefs of their actual appointments.
Yeah, exactly. And the sales managers really appreciate it because they always tell me they don't have time to do this. I don't have time to sit here and talk to my reps about every single appointment. And even when they have a sales meeting, they don't do it because they're talking about all the logistics and you guys got to get your paperwork in by 10 o'clock at night. You guys got to submit 4 pictures. Most guys, you're doing 2. They spend all this time on homework and all these things. And all of a sudden the sales meeting's over. When you actually have a sales meeting for a full hour and everyone just talks about the appointments they just went on, it's game changing. And it's also like, it's not just negative either. It's like people talk about where they struggle, but then you get success. Like, oh my God, I did this and it worked. And I made a $35,000 sale and everybody gets pumped up for you. But it's amazing how many sales meetings, they don't go over the individual appointments. What they'll do is like, they'll start the meeting with, hey, Tony had a great month. Woohoo. He sold 150,000. And Janie, she was at 133. And Pete last night sold one for 60. Meanwhile, the other 10 who didn't sell anything feel like crap. Right. So there's no feeling of teamwork there. But when you get everyone talking at the same time, maybe the guy who sold 150 will help the guy who's struggling. The 2 of them, rather than a sales manager saying, if I'm a sales rep and the top guy is helping me or giving me advice, I'm going to listen to that. So that's what that type of training that I do, kind of facilitates.
There was a really good study years ago with the Marine Corps, and they said the retainment was 70% when it was peer-to-peer versus an officer training in their case, an officer training a enlisted. I was like, ooh.
Well, it's the same thing with bringing in an outside voice. I think the last study I saw by I think it was Cornell University said bringing in an outside voice just for a workshop or a seminar or whatever, the employees retain 83% more of the information than if the same information was given by the sales manager.
I've witnessed that where I'm like, I just told you guys that for the past 4 months, and here comes Allan.
Yeah, exactly.
That guy's a genius. I'm like, oh, he is. You're right. He is.
He's a genius. Keep bringing him back.
He is. I mean, wow. Is he levitating in here, or did he actually walk? Oh man, you're involved in all kinds of. It's not just your kind of home improvement / home service. I mean, you work on lumber. A little bit of everything.
Yeah. I mean, I focus in the construction, the in-home sales industry. That's my wheelhouse. But sales is sales. The psychology of sales is the. So I've trained architects, realtors, lumber companies, you name it. I've kind of done it. But my love, I love going to giving keynotes and workshops at conferences for in-home salespeople, painting industry, sunroom industry. I did a keynote for the people at Gutter Helmet about a year ago. So all of these, I have a lot of street credibility, because when I can say I've been in 10,000 homes and they're all sitting there and they sell in the home, people listen a little more than if I'm talking to people who sell SaaS software. Who's this guy?
Yeah, no, that's a big point there. Something it caught my eye when we first, like I said, when we first started talking, was like, oh, this is legit.
Yeah.
With the awards and everything. Plus, it wasn't like you were selling a low end from a price point product. You were with renewal, which obviously at that time, it may even still be. I'm assuming you guys were doing Provia.
We did entry doors with Provia, but all the patio doors were Anderson, and then obviously the renewal product. And it was one product. It wasn't like many window companies have different levels of products, from vinyl to fiberglass to wood.
Yeah.
Anderson was just one window.
That's awesome. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, is there any, if you can share, I don't want to, because I'd like people, I always recommend the book, obviously, and connecting directly with you. What do you do anything different with actual price delivery?
Yes. So there's two, we talked about the price anchoring before, but when I do price training, there's two levels. There's two areas of price training. Price training is not just anchoring the price. It's how you present the price as well. And there's 3 or 4 different ways you can do that based on what you sell. But the most popular and the most effective, and the one that's pretty much applicable to almost any product, is giving the customer choices, giving them 3 choices. I get pushback on this a lot. Well, I only sell, like, Gutter Helmet actually pushed me back on this. Like, well, we sell gutter protection. How can I give them 3 choices? I said, there's always 3 choices. They want a whole house of Gutter Helmet. Great. Here's the whole house. But you know what? Here's the front of the house. Oh, here's if you want to, do 6 different colors, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The psychology of choosing 3 is so, it's been proven. There's been 100 studies on it. If you show someone one price, their mindset is yes or no. It's a decision mindset. I'm going to say yes or I'm going to say no. And more often than not, because you shock them with the price, they're going to say, I'm going to think about it. If you give them 3 choices, whatever those choices are, and again, I can get into this specific details of how to come up with the choices, but 3 choices, the mindset is now goes to a decision mindset of, what am I going to choose rather than am I going to buy? So you simply say, here are the choices. I know you said you wanted 5 windows, but here's the whole house just in case. Our computer does the whole house just so you have it. And here's 1 window, or here's your 5 windows with the patio door. Now, and then you just let them talk about it. Now they're thinking, which one are we choosing, honey? Rather than yes or no. And when I did that, and it was hard with renewal because their software didn't allow it. So I had to actually kind of come up with a way to do it myself. And don't think choices are just financing. Like, people make the mistake of, okay, well, I give them choices. I give them 12 months, no interest, 6.9 or 9.9. That's not a choice, because the price is the same. You need to have them a choice of the actual project. Project 1 is this, project 2 is this, project 3 is this. Don't use good, better, best. Don't do that. That's crap, because it's just this, you put people in like, kind of it's almost like a sales terminology. You just want to, you can use bronze, silver, gold, but I would just use, like, in roofing shingles, this is the Majesty, this is the Majestic, and this is the Excellence. And the Excellence is the best roofing shingle, comes with 50 years. The Majesty is this, and the Excellent, and the intro one is for rental properties. Now they just know, and you kind of guide them, and more often than not, they're going to choose the best product.
Do you, if you don't mind, so on top of that, are you big on any, I'm assuming probably back when you were at least running, was there kind of this idea of 1 year current promotion and then today only?
Yeah, that was something that I think every company uses it. Like, if you buy today and save kind of thing. I never liked it because it's very salesy. It's very swarmy. You can set it up that way, and there's ways to do it where no matter how you do it, it's going to come across as pressure. It's the old concept of the takeaway. Like, here's the price today, but if you don't buy it today, I want to take that away. But see, customers today are just too savvy with that. There's too much information out there. I always just gave the price. Here's the price here's my percentage. And I never gave a same day discount because I never had to. I just, here's the
Did
price.
you? And you, I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know, but were you tied to a first sit, or did you have the ability to go back?
That changed as I was there. So while I was there the first 6 or 7 years, I had the ability to follow up with my customers. Then they changed that. Then they really got into, because there were so many reps. You didn't sell it, it went to the rehash department, which that's a whole nother conversation. But if you do your job right, and obviously I don't care how much money people make, people like coupons and discounts, they just like them. And if you give them something, and this is the advertised discount, and you do your job right and you build the value, and they're not shocked by the price, you don't need a same day discount.
Yeah.
Now you might get those people who want to negotiate. You always get the negotiators. Well, can you do a little better? And if I got a negotiator, I always had the discount in my pocket, but I didn't tell them it was a same day discount. I'd make it sound like I personally took the money off myself. All right, I'll do another $350 off for you. But we got to get you on the calendar today. And they would do it. But I always had that in my back pocket. So many reps, like, let's say they're allowed to drop from the retail price 25%. Don't drop 25%. Like the whole, just, if you just drop 20, take, whatever your discount is, whatever that printed discount is, do that. And that's it. You don't need, they're going to get something. They're going to feel good about that. And then the rest came from the value and the pricing that you built prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, it comes up often, and it's, if they don't want it at your, in my example, at a 30-day, like the idea of any type of incentive for today is really like, I'm already doing it with you. I know I'm doing it with you. Maybe here's the nudge to do it today. Right. But they got to still want it and see the value at the everyday price that you're going to hold on, regardless if they don't do it. Like if they don't want it at that point, I mean, maybe there's a few, like you're saying, that you can get over the hump with it, but I'll tell you one thing, I think it really can accelerate burnout.
Yeah. And you got to think about back to the symptom of why do you feel like you need to give the discount in the first place? If you have to give a discount, if they're saying I need to think about it, now you got to use the discount, you screwed up to begin with. They're surprised in the price, and you didn't build the value to the price that it actually was. So giving another 5% is now going to feel like pressure rather than it feeling good that, oh, this guy's really working with me.
Yeah.
So that's why it's happening, because you just didn't do your job to that point to begin with.
Spot on. We could talk all day, but I also know it's Friday. I also know you're on the East Coast like me, and hopefully getting ready to enjoy a beautiful weekend. Hopefully it's not too hot up north.
It's actually it's 81 and no humidity today, so it's gorgeous. And you're my last appointment, so
well, then
I'm going to enjoy a nice glass of wine when we're done.
There you go. You always bring value, and I appreciate that. And I really hope that you'll obviously everybody can connect with you. I know through the group.
Yep.
But when I'll put this in the group so you can, if you would, just tag your contact info. I highly recommend it. Tag the book. If you're going to start anywhere, I would say, folks, start with the 7 Secrets. I love it. I still refer back to it often. So
awesome. Yeah. And it's very simple. It's the 7secretsalesacademy.com with the number 7, and they'll get there, and I have a podcast, which it's I've paused right now, because just so you guys know, and I'll tease this out, I'm actually probably going to, and I think I mentioned this to you, I'm going to be doing a podcast strictly for the in-home selling industry.
Whoa, I didn't know that. I'm going to be
doing that. Oh yeah. And you're going to be my guest when I get it done. I'm just looking for a sponsor right now. So once I do that, but the name is going to be Selling in the Dwelling, and it'll be specific to the in-home sales industry.
That's awesome. I can't wait. I know that'll be good. Knowing you, I know it'll be good. So, Allan, I appreciate your time. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll connect again soon.
All right, my friend Joe. Have a good one. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.